Some scholars have argued that the Egyptians preceded the Mesopotamians with the invention of writing, but the consensus, which is what we must go by, though it is shifting, is what writing first occurred in Mesopotamia. In the area occupied by modern Iraq, they used clay tablets because there was a lack of food and things with which no make paper. With a little pen-like instrument called a conneus, they wrote pictures on clay that had a word or sound value. We call these pictures preserved on clay tablets cuneiform writing. It was fortunate that they used clay because once it is hardened, it survived violence and fire. We now have thousands of clay tablets, which are thousands of years old, dating back to the period of the late 4th millennium before Christ. They record the thoughts and ideas, chiefly about commerce in their early writing, but increasingly about literature, religion, and law. The first civilization, the first society, is usually referred to as Sumeria, the land of Shamar. The Bible refers to it as the land of Simar. They are all the same. We refer to the people who lived there as Sumerians. The Sumerians were a remarkable people. They were a long-lasting civilization of enormous accomplishment. One of the exciting things about the Sumerians is that when the curtain goes up, everything is already in full motion. From their very first writings, they reveal an organized society with kings, laws, literatures, school, and libraries. They appear on world scene as a very sophisticated people.
Before time began, there was no heaven, no earth, no space, just nothing. The waves of vast ocean locked into the edges of this nothingness, and the giant cobra appeared into the water. Lying asleep in the snake's coils was Lord Vishnu, and the snake kept him safe and he slept there peacefully. Slowly a sound started. Um, it grew loud and filled the emptiness. It flopped with energy and drove the nothingness away. Lord Vishnu woke up, and a magnificent lotus flower grew in his navel. Right in the middle of the flower is Lord Brahma. Lord Vishnu told Lord Brahma to set the world and create a world. And still, sitting on the flower, Brahma calmed the wind, stilled the waves, and there's peace. Brahma split the large flower, making three different parts: the heavens, the earth, and the skies. To start with, the earth was bare, so Brahma created everything: the grass and all kinds of flowers, trees and plants. He gave them the ability to grow. He let living things of all, so that the earth became full of animals, insects, birds, and fish. He gave them the ability to touch and smell, as well as the ability to say, hey, grr. Hindus have many ways of thinking about God. As part of this, they said there is one God that uses different names for God. When he does different things, when God creates, is Lord Brahma, and when God looks after his creation, he is called Vishnu. But God has a third name. At some time, God will decide to bring the universe to an end, and as Lord Shiva, he will destroy the universe.
Chinese civilization originated in various regional centers along both the Yellow River and the Yangtze River valleys in the Neolithic era, but the Yellow River is called the cradle of Chinese civilization. With thousands of years of continuous history, China is one of the world's oldest civilizations. The written history of China can be found as early as the Shang dynasty, circa 1700 to 1046 BC. However, ancient historical texts such as the records of the Grand Historian and bamboo annals assert the existence of a Xia dynasty before the Shang. Archived bones with ancient Chinese writing have been dated to the late Shang dynasty around 1200 BC. Much of Chinese culture, literature, and philosophy further developed during the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty began to bow to external and internal pressure in the 18th century BC, and the kingdom eventually broke apart into smaller states, beginning in the spring and autumn period and reaching full expression in the Warring States period. This is one of multiple periods of failed statehood in Chinese history, the most recent of which was the Chinese Civil War. In between eras of multiple kingdoms and warlordism, Chinese dynasty, or more recently republics, have ruled all of China, minus Xinjiang and Tibet. In some eras, including the present, they have controlled Xinjiang and/or Tibet as well. This practice began with the Qin dynasty in 221 BC. Queen Shi Huang united the various warring kingdoms and created the first Chinese empire. Successive dynasties in Chinese history developed bureaucratic systems that enabled the Emperor of China to directly control vast territories. Chinese history has alternating periods of political unity and disunity, with China occasionally being dominated by inner Asian peoples. Most of the inner Asian people were in turn assimilated into the Han Chinese population. Cultural and political influences from many parts of Asia, carried by successive waves of immigration, expansion, and cultural assimilation, are part of the modern culture of China.
In 18 BC, Baekje was founded in west of East Sea, emerged as the dominant kingdom of the three kingdom periods this century, in the 4th century when King Gongzhugu was on the throne. Baekje, with excellent geopolitical location, connected ancient China's Joseon, present-day Hebei, and Shandong provinces to the Korean peninsula and Japan. It became the center of Northeast Asia's economy and trade, due to its important role as marine traffic route. Furthermore, Baekje dispatched many scholars. These scholars introduced Buddhism, thousands character texts, and Chinese literature to Japan. Their teaching helped Asuka culture, Japan's first Buddhist culture in the 7th century, to flourish. Horyuji Temple, located in Nara Prefecture, Japan, is where we can find Baekje's relics. The Baekje Gwanam Sang have the look of water image enshrined with this building is the oldest wood-carved structure of Japan. The figure that stands higher than 2 meters and its graceful beauty shows the perfection of Baekje's Buddhist fine arts. Baekje is the ancient Korean kingdom that is closely related to Japan. The Japanese still use the word Baekje as the name of an area, and today's Emperor of Japan Akihito is the descendant of King Moryong of Baekje. In 1993, a piece of Baekje's artifacts astonished the world. It was the Gomdong Daehyangno that built bronze incense burner of Baekje. On the top, a phoenix which appears as if it's ready to fly away is holding a Sintonami ball, and on the cover of 42 animals such as the phoenix, the tiger, deer, and others are hanging about in the spaces among 74 mountain peaks. There are merely 140 sculptors and dancers and musicians who are playing pearl, taikuri, flutes, and kaigon's 12-string black sitar. Moreover, plants, rocks, mountain paths, streams, and waterfalls around Gomdong-daehyangno compile an admiration. The body, which is shaped semicircular both, is composed of 3 layers of lotus flowers and 27 animals. There are 2 people carved and relieved. Underneath looks like a dragon supporting a lotus flower bud in full bloom. Gomdong Daehyangno shows the essence of Baekje's craft, made of amalgamation of spiritual world and artistic amplitude, and is considered as the best ancient metal craft because of outstanding originality. The collapse of Baekje dynasty is one of the saddest incidents in history. The Baekje fell due to an attack from the Silla-Tang alliance. Almost 3,000 court ladies hurled themselves into Lake Megang River. This cliff is called Napkwang Falling Flowers Rock because the court ladies plucked into the end resembles falling flowers petals. The people of the Baekje dynasty are said to have been mild in manner. The artistic world lives with splendor and mysteriousness, which are unrivalled by any other area.
Before the heaven and earth came into existence, all was in chaos. And the manage of them in a more than infinite shape of form. There is no definition between yin and yang, heaven and earth, light and dark, male and female. Then the entire massive existence from an egg of pure element is stretching to the outside, forming the heavens, and the empire elements congealing on the inside, forming the dark of the earth. From the ocean of chaos, a reedy rose from out of earth and grew into the heavens. This was to be called Akamagahara, the high pen of heaven. From this root was the eternal Imitukachi, the first scout to touch the earth, within created remarkably of all gods, a brother-sister pair of Izanagi and Izanami. They were given a task of criminal will live in. Standing on Amanohokachi, a coding bridge of heaven is not below the mess, will not condemn what looks like a sea, filming pag-loading to infinite air, an imperium that will become the earth. Izanagi then plunged to the ocean when God pulled the frame, the water and the drifting spear coagulated on the first island of the Japanese archipelago, the island of Onopono. Delilah and Botroposo, the 2 gods sent from the floating bridge to reach the lecturing island, reduplicative of heaven. Izanami and Izanagi then decided to get married. They walked to the pillar and headed each other to the opposite side, and they saw each other's faces. Izanami exclaimed, "What a fine young man into God's wed." Their first child was to form a master Darya to the world on raid boat. This child became known as Ibisu, the god of fishermen. A later island child was also into successful and scared by their failure proclamation. Returned to heaven and consulted the deceased there. The deities explained the accused of difficulties was the female spoken first at the wedding ceremony. Izanagi and Izanami returned to their island and that again behind the heaven and the pillar. This time when they met he said, "What a fine young woman," and then she said, "What a fine young man." They made and gave birth to 8 main islands in Japan and 6 minor islands Then they gave birth to a variety of gods to have on those islands, including the Sea of God, God of the Sea Strait, God of Rivers, trees, birds, and so forth. Last, Izanami gave birth to the Fire God, and her generals per battle burned when she died. Distraught and full of anger when Izanami's death, Izanagi used just a long sword beheaded the sun, the god of fire. From the bottom of his sword, he made deeds including 3 deeds of rocks, 2 fire and 1 water. After slaying the fire god, he set out to reach Izanami in the underworld and called out to her. She came to him, saying, "You were too late. I've already into the plan, but I would like to return. Wait here for me, and I will ask permission. But do not try to look for me." Impatient and tired of waiting, he broke up the tooth from the comb he wore on his hair. He used a torch and followed her. When he found her, he saw a horrid form of the once beautiful and graceful Izanami. She was running on a flesh, maggots, and foul creatures running over her rubbish body. In this state, Izanami was giving birth to the 8 gods of thunder. The poles by this side, Izanagi cried out the under back. Now, awakened fearless of Izanagi, Izanami shrieked and sent Wild on the him to bring him back to him. The spirit pursued Izanagi, but he managed to escape, and through the opening of the underworld, Izanami screamed from the behind the spectacle and told Izanagi if he loved her, she would destroy 1,000 residents to the living every day. If furiously replied, he would get lives to 1,500. Then, Izanagi left Izanami to the underworld to return to land for the living. Being unclean from the contact of the dead, Izanagi take a bath to purify himself. The number of god and goddesses of good and evil emerged from discarded of living. During his bath, a sun goddess Amaterasu appeared from his left eye, and moon goddess Chikuyomi from his pure right eye, and Susanoo from the god of sea and storm came from his nose. Proud of these children, Tsunagi divided his kingdom among them.
Fourth Crusade was to attack Egypt, but it failed when the Crusaders started to quarrel with the Byzantines. It ended when the Crusaders chose to sack Constantinople instead of invading Egypt. In Europe, many small and bloody crusades were also ordered, such as the Albigensian Crusade. The Christians tried several times to recapture the Holy Land. The 5th, 7th, 8th, and 9th Crusades all ended in a draw or disaster. But one man succeeded without using any type of weapons: Emperor Frederick II of the Holy Roman Empire. The story began when Frederick was incommunicated by the Pope. He wanted to gain trust, so he spoke to the Muslims. Frederick negotiated with them and made them give Jerusalem to the Christians by using nothing more than words. And so the Pope cancelled the excommunication. The situation slowly became more and more critical towards the Crusaders. Jerusalem was recaptured by the Muslims in year 1244. French King Louis tried twice to capture the Holy Land. He failed both times. The Crusader soldiers and cities started to collapse. Crusaders were defeated several times by Muslim soldiers. The Christians didn't succeed, they had failed. By the end of the 13th century, all the Crusader cities were captured. Even the Crusaders' largest castle, Crac de Chevalier. The Crusader age was over.
The Philippines was discovered by Ferdinand Magellan and fought its own battle with Lapu-Lapu at the shores of Mactan. Lapu-Lapu won the battle. Bonifacio gathered a group and named it as Katipunan or KKK. Kataas-taasang katipon-tipunan, galang-galangang anak ng bayan, who set aside their identities for their love of a country. It has falsely accused priests who died as heroes. Its national hero, even in jail, believed in a peaceful revolution and died a hero's death. Jose Rizal was executed. He is still hoping for peace. It became a republic and gained independence through the Commonwealth. It fought a war against Japan, which is the World War I. MacArthur and the Americans returned to the Philippines, and the war is won through teamwork. Thereafter,
after it had before. It had peaceful revolution.
Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys. On your own base. On your own. Shout to all my boss boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys. Shout to all my boss boys, shout to all my boss boys, we rowdy. Shout to all my boss boys, on your own base. On your own base. Yo, I'm eating Fun Dip right now. Not giving a fuck.
The concept of Shen is a fundamental part of the traditional Chinese medicine. Shen is considered to be part of three treasures that forms life: Jing, the essence; Qi, the life force; and Shen, which is really translated as the spirit. Shen embodies consciousness, mind or thought. It is Shen that raises the consciousness of human beings. A birth of living creatures, the earliest discourse on Shen is in ancient Chinese medical texts, Huangzi Neijing, or the Yellow Emperor's Book of Internal Classics in the section called The Root of Spirit. According to his historical text, the Yellow Winter asked a question which was answered by the chief physician Shibu, beginning with these words: Heaven abides so that we have virtue, earth abides so that we have Qi. When virtue flows and Qi is blended, there is life. Senior lecturer and dean of the European School of Acupuncture, Elizabeth Rocha de la Valle, says the concept of Shen is expressed in the relationship of the traditional Chinese medicine or TCM practitioner with the patient.
So, but what is shown is that when you are a practitioner, what is important is the relationships with the patient. It's a lot of things, of course. You are supposed to know your job, to know the techniques, to know how to make the diagnosis and so on. Okay, that is the very basis. So, but on the other hand, what is also important is that you are a human being treating another human being. And so there is a lot in the relationships.
Raja in Australia to give a lecture on Shen in Chinese religion and medicine says, in ancient China, cultivating oneself is the key to doctor-patient relationship. Raja will lecture some Chinese classical medical text says, in ancient China, to take care of the people is part of the harmony of the world, and Shen is expressed in the harmony. Raja says the embodiment of compassion in Shen in traditional Chinese medicine is a Buddhist approach. She refers to the legendary Chinese doctor Su Sun-yang, who was known for the meticulous care for his patient.
That is more a Buddhist approach. It depends if you take compassion as just something shared in the humankind or with a specific Buddhist approach. So now I will say, we find compassion, for instance, as one of the main things from the practitioner in the doctor of Chinese doctors or writing of Chinese doctors who were Buddhists. For instance, there is a very famous one from the 6th, 7th century AD, Sun Miao, and he was a Buddhist, and he wrote about the relationship between the practitioner and the patient, and of course compassion for him is at the core of the relation.
Sun believed practicing medicine is an art of compassion. He was dedicated to the care of women and children. Sun is remembered for writing medical ethics entitled The Sincerity and Devotion of Great Doctors.
Yoga is a generic term for the physical, mental, and spiritual practices or discipline which originated in ancient India with a view to attain a state of permanent peace. Yoga is a Sanskrit word which means union and is interpreted as union with the divine. One of the most detailed and thorough exposition on the subject is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which defines yoga as the stilling of the changing states of mind. Yoga is also interpreted as the yoke that connects being to the machine of existence. Post-classical traditions considered Hiranyagarbha as the originator of yoga. Pre-philosophical speculations and diverse ascetic practices of first millennium were systematized into a formal philosophy in early centuries by the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. By the turn of the first millennium, Hatha Yoga emerged from Tantra. It, along with its many modern variations, is the style that many people associate with the word yoga today. Vajrayana Buddhism, founded by the Indian Mahasiddhas, has a parallel series of asanas and pranayamas such as Kundalini and Yatra Yoga. In the 1980s, yoga became popular as the system of physical exercise across the Western world. This form of yoga is called Hatha Yoga. Many studies have tried to determine the effectiveness of yoga as a complementary intervention for cancer, asthma, and heart patients. In a national survey, long-term yoga practitioners in the United States reported musculoskeletal and mental health improvements. Generally put, yoga is a disciplined method utilized for attaining a goal. The ultimate goal of yoga is moksha, or the liberation, though the exact definition of what form this takes depends on the philosophical or theological system with which it is conjugated. In Shaiva theology, yoga is used to unite Kundalini with Shiva. Mahabharata defines the purpose of yoga as the experience of Brahman or Atman pervading all things. In the specific sense of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, yoga is defined as the sensation of the perturbation of the mind. This is described by Patanjali as the necessary condition of transcending discursive knowledge and to be one of the divinely understood spirit.
Absolute freedom occurs when the lucidity of material nature and spirit are in pure equilibrium. Apart from the spiritual goals, the physical postures of yoga are used to alleviate health problems, reduce stress, and make the spine supple in contemporary times. Yoga is also used as a complete exercise program and physical therapy routine.